So,
Right.
very good. Well, welcome everyone to the For Christ virtual wine and cheese reception. How, you ask, can we do a virtual wine and cheese reception? It's simple. You are at your computer screen, and I hope that you brought yourself a glass of wine, and I hope you also brought some cheese. There's great advantages to doing a virtual wine and cheese reception, because first of all, you can choose your own wine. You don't have to put up with some cheap, who knows what it is that some nonprofit organization is going to serve you. There we have a Malbec from Argentina. Very nice. And what else do we have there? What's the other one?
Dave, what are you drinking there?
I'm drinking a nice red from California.
Oh.
And I'm drinking a red from, let's get some light right there. This is a red from the state of Washington, from the Columbia River Valley, Canoe Ridge Vineyards, and it is a red blend. Very good. So we get to choose our own wine and choose our own cheeses as well. It's very much localist, but also, you know, when you go to a wine and cheese reception, you usually have to stand, and you have your wine in one hand and your little plate of cheese in the other, and you know you really can't eat the cheese or properly, you know, do. And so this is a much more controlled and comfortable setting for a wine and cheese reception. So I hope you're taking advantage of that. But we are doing this for a very important reason. But I would like to, by way of introduction, say that G.K. Chesterton said that every introduction requires another introduction. And that introduction also requires an introduction, and so forth and so on until you get back to the creation of the world. The Italians, of whom my wife happens to be one, always remind each other when they ask them to explain something, to tell a story, they always say, and don't start with Adam and Eve. So, you know, get to the point. Well, we're going to try to get to the point as quickly as possible, but still we have to figure out how we got here. It really did start because of me discovering G.K. Chesterton, and subsequently discovering the Catholic Church because of discovering G.K. Chesterton, and starting the American Chesterton Society, which led to many, many good things, including helping to start the first Chesterton Academy some 12 years ago here in the Twin Cities. When starting the school, I had the great privilege of meeting Richard Vigilante, who was on our board of directors at the very beginning. And even in the very early days, Richard was talking about a vision that he had for Catholic education involving missionary educators who would dedicate part of their lives to serving Catholic schools. It was a germ that he had a long time ago. And as our school developed, and then as one school that we started led to many other schools, and the Chesterton Schools Network, it was very natural then for Richard to pursue creating Teach for Christ, which has been a marvelous initiative so far and has worked very well as one of our sister institutions with the Chesterton Schools Network. It has been an incredible blessing to many people in its early years. Already it has enormous growth potential, as does the Chesterton Schools Network, as people are discovering this revival of Catholic education, this rejuvenation, this reclaiming the souls of their children for Christ, and using evangelization using education as a tool for evangelization. There is a huge crisis in our society today with education. The public schools have failed the public, And the private schools have also failed the public. What we're doing with the Chesterton Academies is we are forming souls and minds for Christ. There is a revival within Catholic education that is also very exciting. And Richard has played a major role in the initial growth of that. What we're trying to carry out with the Chesterton Society's partnership with Teach for Christ is to win souls for Christ and to form young minds for Christ, to really change our society, to bring next year's and the next generation's leaders to grow and develop within the great knowledge and tradition and the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic Church. So I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists tonight. The executive director of Teach for Christ, unfortunately, is ill this evening, Teresa Kruger, but since we are involved in education, we naturally know how to get a substitute teacher. So we brought in the executive director of the Chesterton Schools Network, Emily de Rotstein, and also the headmaster of Chesterton Academy here in the Twin Cities, Dave Beskar, and our very special guest tonight, of course, is Richard Vigilante, the founder and the president of Teach for Christ. So let's get started. Emily, I'd like to start with you, please.
Okay,
First of all, fill in for Teresa Kruger and tell us why we're here.
we are here. Well, we're here to celebrate the wonderful alliance that we recently announced between Teach for Christ and the Chesterton Schools Network. We are so excited because we've got 30 schools will be opening this fall across the US, Canada, and our sister school in Italy. And so many of those schools are asking for Teach for Christ missionaries. And we very much want to say yes to our schools. So we're working together to let people know about Teach for Christ. And so tonight we're going to, again, talk about that alliance between Teach for Christ and the Chesterton Schools Network and give you a sense of why Teach for Christ exists and how you can get involved in this wonderful mission. And it is an honor to sit in for Teresa Kruger tonight. I hope all of you have a chance to meet with her at a later date. She's an amazing executive director, and we are so grateful to her and the work that she does for Teach for Christ. We miss her tonight.
Richard Vigilante, you created this wonderful, wonderful new monster. Tell us a little bit about what you had in mind and what is happening with this, please.
Well, first of all, it came from gratitude. I went to Catholic school. Catholic school set the course of my life. Except for my parents, nothing was more important in making me, in the good parts, of the person I became. We won't go into the negatives. So Catholic school was hugely important to me, and we want Catholic schools to be strong. We want that opportunity for every Catholic family in the country. So we decided to create an adventure, right? And Teach for Christ really is an adventure. The organization is an adventure because we're trying to grow so that we can send 10,000 missionaries around the world to Catholic schools everywhere. But it's also an adventure for our missionaries, right? A lot of our missionaries do end up as lifelong teachers, and that certainly is an adventure. My dad was a teacher his whole life, and I certainly watched him have some adventures. But not all of them end up in education. In fact, a majority are actually just young adults who are looking for a very special year, right? And what it combines, so we recruit, we train young Catholic adults, usually college graduates, and we send them on a mission into Catholic schools, Chesterton Academies, inner city elementary schools, middle class elementary schools, and their job is to teach, tutor, coach sports, lead clubs, mentor. We do a lot of what we call the evangelization of the hallways, right? That and this is particularly strong in the high schools, as our missionaries meet and make relationships with their students in a way that maybe it might be a little awkward for teachers to do. So it really is, it's taking a year out of your life to do something very special, very high impact, changes the lives of the students that you encounter, and it's an enormous amount of fun. Right? I mean, we live in community, we work together, we pray together, we play together. And I just think, I mean, the missionaries who end up becoming teachers, this is the beginning of their career. And I should say, based on actual evidence, which Dave can talk about in a second, that if you ever wanted to teach in a Chesterton high school and you don't have a lot of prior experience, probably joining Teach for Christ is the best path into becoming a faculty member at Chesterton School, and we can document that. But what I love is the missionaries who come to us who are going to end up as hedge fund managers or lawyers or whatever, but they had the time to take a really special year doing something they would never do. And it is such a dynamic and surprising experience to be in the middle of a school and to have an impact every day. And in some ways, more of an impact even than a teacher gets to have in an ordinary sense. We're usually the missionaries are usually the second person in the classroom. We call them academic coaches. So they're a little bit like free safeties, right? They can roam. They can focus on the kids who need help. They can focus on the kids who need a challenge. They're more free to develop relationships with the students, and so we're also taking advantage of their relative closeness in age, and they just, if you ask a Teach for Christ missionary about their year, they'll tell you about living in community. They'll tell you about how much fun that was. They'll tell you about the challenges. They'll tell you about learning to lead, which is incredibly important. That's actually our slogan: serve, teach, love, lead. All right, that's special effects there. But mostly they'll talk about the students. They're just great stories. And Dale said that education is evangelization. I agree with that, and I'll add that evangelization is community, and community is evangelization. And what our missionaries do, is make more community in these schools, because they're not stressed like a teacher is. They have the extra time. They can participate in clubs. They can participate in the evangelization of the hallways. They can get to know. And so we're building community, which is actually the way Christianity was spread in the Roman Empire, right? I mean, yeah, I know St. Paul wrote some great letters, but really it was people forming loving communities and getting to know each other and bearing their hearts as Christians. And that's what we do.
Wonderful. Richard, you've had the great privilege of working directly with our headmaster at Chesterton Academy, who was also present at the creation when Teach for Christ first got started. And Dave, could you please tell us about the impact that the Teach for Christ missionaries have had in your personal experience at Chesterton Academy?
Yeah, absolutely, Dale. Thank you. I think, we've completed 3 years with Teach for Christ, and it's gone by so quickly. And as I'm thinking about the past 3 years and even year one, it was one of those things where it was there's a lot of uncertainty about it. But I knew as a young teacher many years ago that having the young life in the school, it would only add to the quality of the education. I know teachers initially had questions about that. And I think Teach for Christ educators had questions about that too. And how would this work? But as Richard said, we really are about building a community at Chesterton Academy and Teach for Christ. A community of young people, of adults. And what I saw happen very quickly is the Teach for Christ educators, missionaries, quickly became friends with the faculty. It was just really a matter of saying, you know what, teachers, you already have a lot on your plate. These guys are here to help. They can grab that student that you might not have time to work with, and they'll spend time with them. Of course, teachers like, really? Wow, that's amazing. You know, I know somebody's going to lead this young person in something that maybe I can't get to right now. You know, I'll do my best to make time for it, but wow, this is amazing. And it was very much something that developed quickly, where the appreciation of what was going on in the classroom by the Teach for Christ members, and the appreciation of the members themselves by the faculty just grew. And then after that initial introduction, and when the faculty and missionaries are working well together, then it becomes the missionaries are also interested in saying, well, how do you teach? Maybe could I help teach? Could I lead? And we found that there are different missionaries that have come on board, and actually I've hired a couple of them to be full-time teachers as well. So it was an opportunity for a few of those missionaries to have opportunity in the classroom, to see a master teacher teach, ask questions, get mentored, maybe take over a lesson plan, a unit, and get advice and groom their own teaching. And it really worked wonders. And so we've received at least of the four, well, actually of all four that have been at Chesterton Academy of the Twin Cities, all four of them have done classroom teaching at some point in their career, or have been hired on as full-time teachers. So you really see this growth and this kind of energy, synergy that takes off between the school, between the teachers and the missionaries. The other thing I wanted to point out too is the missionaries really do get into the spirit of the school right away. As Richard was talking about, they could participate with clubs, stay after school. They do a lot of things of just evangelizing. At Chesterton Academy, we have several retreats throughout the course of the year. We have our freshman, senior, sophomore retreats. And the Teach for Christ members are perfect for going on a long weekend with a bunch of 14, 15, 17-year-olds, staying overnight, having fun, having some serious spiritual conversations, leading small group discussions. And the Teach for Christ missionaries just do a tremendous job that way. So they really do get into the spirit of the school. And even outside of the classroom, obviously we try to get them in the classroom a little bit to get that exposure, that work, but there's a lot of administrative things to do too. Teach for Christ will work with a group of students, for example, and call all of our donors and thank them. They'll be in the back office helping out with athletic schedules, contacting parents, let them know, hey, carpools have changed, rain delay, things of that nature. They're always there to step in. So there's that administrative side, there's that promotion of the school side, there's the spiritual component, as well as the intellectual and character formation. So we see them constantly involved. And the other thing I think too is that, as Richard is pointing out, that there is something that students, especially high school students, see in these young men and women. They probably see themselves. Hey, that's where I want to be in 4 years. College educated, something really going for myself, but yet willing to stop, serve, care for younger brothers in Christ and sisters in Christ. And so you see them in the hallways, you see them in conversations, really getting to know the students. And you can just see that they're a great support. You see this friendship develop, and I have a great story about just the blessing that is to our students. Two of the Teach for Christ past members are now faculty of the Twin Cities, just got married this past weekend. And they've both been teaching a year or so, and they've been friends with these students, especially the graduating seniors. They've seen them for the last several years and mentored them, been on retreats. And so when I went to the wedding, there was only 5 people singing, doing the music for the wedding. And I picked out the voices. And it's like, oh, that's such and such graduate. That's such and such graduate. And sure enough, it was 5 graduates who were the singers for this wedding for these Teach for Christ missionaries, now Chesterton Academy faculty. And so they see friendship and they want to give back to each other. So it's just a beautiful experience of showing love, giving your time and energies as a Teach for Christ missionary, and then receiving it back 100-fold. Probably one last thing I want to say too, as Richard was talking about living in community, I know for certain, even though I've never sat around a dinner table with Teach for Christ educators and missionaries, but I'm sure every night they come home and they have dinner together and they just tell great stories about the kids. And because I can remember living in community as a young teacher and just coming home and telling great stories about our day, the funny things that happen, the profound things that happen. And I'm sure that happens every day in their community life too. And you can see that they're really joyful about their life. And so every missionary that has been at Chesterton Academy, I can see that they've gained a ton while they're giving a ton as well. So it's a huge blessing for the school. And now that we have 30-some Chesterton Academies around the country, Canada, we're always looking for more young, energetic people to come and just spend a year or 2 of their life giving to these young people and really mentoring these fine young men and women who someday will be doing the same in the future as well.
It's a great report. I mean, it's wonderful. Of course, I was at that wedding too. And the fact that 2 of our faculty members got married, but they were both Teach for Christ missionaries. It's a great story. Yeah, and the students singing there. It was a lovely, lovely day on Saturday. Okay, so I think we've tried to make the case, but Richard, we need to know more, and I'm sure people who are watching this have a lot of questions. So we're gonna grill you for just a bit here. Tell us, how are these missionaries trained? What kind of training do they receive to become?
Training is intense, and it does. We do run through many of the tools of the trade of being a classroom teacher. You learn how to do a lesson plan. You learn how to deliver a lesson, even though you may not be teaching every day. They're very often called on to substitutes, so they do have to learn those essential skills. But I would say that our training is largely relational. It's largely about leading and building community. So we do 4 weeks of faith formation, classroom training, and learning how to tutor, which is very, very, very important. So there's nothing that you will be asked to do as a missionary that you haven't been trained for. And then we have ongoing in-service training during the year. But through it all, look, teachers, we have a motto. It's serve, teach, love, lead. And this is the greatest preparation for life. Even if, you could be a business executive the rest of your life, you're going to have to serve the people who work for you. You're going to have to teach the people who work for you and your customers. And although they don't might not talk about this a lot in business school, you want to be an effective leader, you have to love the people who work for you. And you have to lead them. So, and these really, there's no better place than a school to learn these skills. This is what teaching consists of. So we actually wrap up training with 3 more weeks. We do a week in the wilderness. We do a wilderness leadership retreat with the core a Catholic wilderness program out of the University of Wyoming, Catholic college out there. And that's, I think that's the most important thing we do, because you come away with a real sense of community and charity. It's really easy to talk charity until it matters, right? Until if you didn't look out for others, they're exposed to the elements in a potentially dangerous way. So that's a big part of the program. And then we end it 2 weeks in your school that you're going to be assigned to, working with the teachers as they prep for the beginning of the year. Every school, brings their teachers in early, and they get prepped for the beginning of the year. Our missionaries work side by side with their teachers, because getting to know them and getting to know how they can help them is really important. So the training is very important. We don't ask you to do anything we haven't trained you to do, but really the core of the training is in relationship and leadership.
So Richard, are your missionaries, are these young people missionaries, or are they educators? I just want to get some clarity around.
There's no distinction in the Catholic school. Everyone in the Catholic school is an educator. Everyone in the Catholic school is on mission, right? I mean, God created this amazing, beautiful world, and He wants us to enjoy it. And for me, the best part of going to school was all the things I learned to enjoy. The books and the music and even the math, I have to say, which I use now more than I did then. So we just don't distinguish between the two. And I don't think, that's why I loved Catholic school, right? We serve in the Chesterton schools. We also serve in some very poor communities in the inner city. And, we may be the only witness to Christ those children will see. And, they know that someone is making tremendous sacrifices to help them. And that's an important witness. That's mission right there. In a school like Chesterton, where the faith may be more actively lived, it's just great for teenagers to see somebody close in age to them, sharing the same things that they care about, but really, knowing Christ and being able to witness to Him. So we just don't. Chesterton is a great writer. My favorite English language writer. But he's a great witness, not just because of what he said, but because he was such a great writer. Right? So you can be a Catholic and you can be brilliant. You can be a brilliant artist, right? And so we're showing these kids, you can be Catholic, you can really care about Jesus, and you can be brilliant in your work. Anyway, I'm sorry, long answer, short question.
Well,
Here's a distinction between missionaries and educators.
Here's a question that just came up in our from one of our viewers tonight, Richard. It has to do with the age restriction or the age preference. They know someone who is older than 28 who might be interested in serving in the capacity of a missionary educator. Is there a tight restriction on that, or how does that work?
So because the missionaries live in community, we've generally thought that they should be within an age group. But anyone who feels that they might be excluded from the age group should get in touch, right? We'll talk.
All right, the invitation remains open. And of course, as you've already talked about the fact that they don't have to necessarily be pursuing a career in education. They're not necessarily people who want to become teachers. It could be something else, right?
It is great. It is great for people who want to become teachers. And our missionaries who do want to become teachers consistently get faculty appointments, whether at Chesterton or at other Catholic schools in the year after, or they find themselves getting accepted into graduate programs like ACE at Notre Dame. So it's a great way to ease into being a teacher. I've talked to so many teachers. One of them is actually on this call. Well, I've talked to so many teachers who can tell you nightmare stories about their first year's teacher being thrown into the deep end. I'm not mentioning any names, Dave, but Teach for Christ actually provides kind of an easier path. You really get exposed to what's going on in the school. You really have an impact on that school. You're treated as a professional. You're not a volunteer. You're a professional, and you're treated that way. But you don't have to sink or swim on the first day. And, you know, a lot of our missionaries who went on to become teachers really did find their vocation by getting involved in the life of one of our schools, and find that this is really what they need, really what they were called to be. So,
all right, now we've had a great relationship with Chesterton Academy and Teach for Christ, but not all of your educators would serve at a Chesterton Academy. Where do they serve?
Well, we do serve in a lot of elementary schools, both lower school and middle school. We, at the request of our Archbishop, we exercise the preferential option for the poor. I hate that phrase because it's so bureaucratic, but what it means is that we put the poor first. And in the Twin Cities, every school we're in besides Chesterton Academy is a mission school, typically in the inner city, typically families who can't even pay a fraction of the supposed tuition, a lot of traumatized kids, a lot of broken families. It is tough duty. It's very, very rewarding duty.
Of course.
And we try to sort people into a school that they're going to be very well suited to. But I can tell you some of the stories that come out of those inner city schools, and our missionaries work there, would break your heart, but in a good way.
Amen. Well, fortunately, by serving at Chesterton Academy, you are also serving the poor.
Yes, alas.
Yeah.
No, I mean, as a board member, I've been complaining about this for years.
Exactly. Yes.
Richard, tell me, how are the Teach for Christ missionary educators compensated?
Oh, well, all right, here's their official compensation.
Speaking of poor, right?
We get travel to and from, right? You get room and board in the community, and you get a small stipend. Small might be overstating it. It's maybe tiny stipend. I mean, I call it the toothpaste and deodorant stipend. And that's pretty much it in terms of what the world looks like at compensation. The biggest compensation is the adventure. I mean, it's the adventure, it's making friends for life, it's doing something that some people never, ever have the chance to do. And they will look back on this year for the rest of their lives as one of the best, most important times they've ever spent. They will always be grateful, not only at what they get, which is a great deal, they will always be grateful for what they were allowed to give.
That's
and it's a life-changing experience. My own daughter hasn't graduated from college yet, so she's not been through the program, but she works with us in an inner city school in the summer, and it completely changed her life. She's adopted, and she met another young man who was adopted, and she heard something she never expected to hear. And he said, Well, when you were in the system, did they hurt you? Because he had been very profoundly abused. Now he's on a good track now, but my daughter never would have encountered that. My daughter never would have encountered that, that at the end of the day, students get called forward to take their food packages home from school. My daughter never would have seen that side of life, which, you know, now all too many of us are becoming very conscious of because of what we've allowed to happen in those neighborhoods. And I am so grateful as a parent that my daughter was able to have that experience. As I say, it's a tough gig. It's not for everybody. We try to place you where you're going to fit, but some beautiful things happen.
Now we have so many young people who are just coming out of college and want to enter Teach for Christ, but what happens to their student loans? Is there a way for them
They're
to
deferred. I mean, I don't want to write that in black letter law, but no missionary who's applied for a deferment has been turned down. And we help you write the letter and, you know, tell you where to send it.
Great, thanks.
But some, in a ministry like this, missionaries are often asked to raise a lot of money to go on a mission. Is that true for Teach for Christ?
Not a lot of money, because we don't spend a lot of money. It costs us about $20,000 to put a missionary in the field. We ask the missionaries to raise $5,000 of that. We make it very easy. We support them with a written program and emails, and I call it a fundraiser in a box, because we lay out the path for them and help them walk the path, but it's not too easy. It's a tremendous learning experience. And, you know, they learn how to sit with an adult and ask him for money for an important cause. And one of the best things they learn, and they're surprised about this, one of the best things they learn is how eager people are to give, right? So I think it's one of the best things about the program. We don't make it too hard. It's not like some programs you got to go out and raise, you know, $18,000 or something ridiculous. It's $5,000. We help do it, and we have a process, but it really is a good experience. Don't turn away from having a mission year because of the fundraising thing. Even if it's not us, even if it's somebody else, you're going to look back on it and it'll be one of the best things you did.
Now, you talked about they get a food and living stipend. Where do they live, though? Where do the student or the missionaries live?
We live in community. We have men's houses and women's houses. Often the house may be a disused convent or rectory that's not being used anymore, and we have a plan of life which involves prayer, scheduled prayer during the day, daily mass, and meals together and cooking together. And so every week, the men's house and the women's house, they really eat almost every meal together, but they're required to have 2 sit-down meals together. But also every week, the men's and the women's house host each other so that they build community between the houses as well.
This question came up, Richard. We haven't developed the Teach for Christ program in Canada per se yet. Is it possible for a Canadian citizen to come to America and participate in Teach for Christ? Do you happen to know if that's possible?
Canadians, we love Canadians, and not just because, you know, it's not like we want to conquer Canada or anything. Don't worry about that, right? Canada can remain independent as long as as far as we're concerned. But yes, we love to have Canadians. Right.
And another question came up about the physical training. Is the wilderness training, is it going to be too difficult for people of a certain constitution that might not be able to handle it?
I can answer that in 2 words, 3 words. I am going.
Well, that's the
I'm
answer.
going to be on the trip, and they're not going to carry me. I'm going to walk on my own, right? There's no technical climbing. It's not Navy SEALs. It's not, it's not Ranger Camp. It's beautiful. It's challenging, but nobody's going to be asked to do physically anything that they don't do, all the time.
So Richard, could you summarize what you are looking for in a Teach for Christ educator?
I'm looking for people with, first of all, a sense of adventure, right? A sense of wanting to do something that they've never done before and may never do again. I'm looking for people who smile, right? Because, living community or being a teacher, it just helps to smile. We're looking for people who are joyful. We're looking for people who get excited by doing something new. It's great. So we are looking for people with excellent academic records, right? And I have to say that's especially true if you're going to teach in the Chesterton Academy, because you'll be teaching probably higher level math and science courses. And in your own way, I'm not going to put language into your mouth, but in your own way, you should really be happy about the idea of serving the Lord in this way. You should really be happy about the idea of witnessing to Christ. I've been a Catholic my whole life. Only very late in life did I become a Christian. It's only late in life did I realize that we're actually supposed to follow Jesus around. We're actually supposed to do the things that he did. And then I found out that it was enormous fun to do those things, right? That being with these kids, being with the poor, helping others, it's just about, the way God created the world is that it's natural that's about the most fun we can have, is helping other people, right? He structured the world exactly that way. And I was raised kind of old fashioned, and it took me a while to figure that out. But we're looking for people who have that sense that that's what they want to do.
That was beautiful.
Well, what are the next steps? How do people are interested in serving Teach for Christ? What do they do next?
Okay, it's very easy. Go to our website, www.teachforchrist, all spelled out, teachforchrist.org. There'll be a big button saying apply or join. I forget, we change the language sometimes. And there's an application. It's not that complicated. Let me just tell, some people are a little hesitant to apply because they're not sure, right? The application is basically, let's get to know each other. So you fill out the application, we learn a little bit about you, we get in touch, we discuss, and we'll figure out together whether Teach for Christ is the right fit for you. We're fairly selective, so it might not be the right fit for you, but that's it. Fill out the application. That's the easiest thing. And we'll know enough about you, we'll get in touch.
There are some videos available, Emily, for the people who want some more information as well. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll send it in a follow-up email, but there's a terrific video on the homepage of teachforchrist.org. We're going to be sending out an email probably first thing in the morning that has an interview with Lucas and Sophia. I don't know if you were breaking up a little bit when you were talking, Dave. So 2 of our Teach for Christ missionary educators happened to get married this weekend after many years of working side by side in the trenches. And so we're going to have a wonderful interview with the 2 of them. We'll make that available to you via video. I check out Teach for Christ on their Instagram page, on their Facebook page, so you can get a sense of what a missionary educator's life is like in the classroom and the beautiful community life that they experience outside of school as well. And I don't know, Dave, do you have any other parting thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say what a great night, and thank you, Richard, for everything you're doing and promoting Teach for Christ. We at the schools are at the receiving end, and the students are too. So it's a beautiful work, and it's only positive for the schools, for the Catholic families, the children. So Teach for Christ, can't recommend it enough.
Well, I'd like to thank Richard for not only for starting Teach for Christ, but for his time this evening and explaining it. And I hope that if you are interested at all, that you'll not only pursue it yourself, but also tell other eligible missionaries about this. This is a growing ministry, but right now it's growing mostly by word of mouth, the same way Christianity grew some 2,000 years ago. And it has been the same way the Chesterton Schools Network has grown. We don't have a huge advertising budget, but we have some marvelously dedicated people who are spreading the good news. And so I want to invite you to be part of this good news and help us find more missionaries that will serve in this way. Today's the feast day of St. Thomas More. And a lot of people don't know this, but St. Thomas More was not canonized until the 20th century. And at the time of his canonization, G.K. Chesterton said, Thomas More is more important now than he was when he was alive. He'll probably be more important in the future than he is now. What we are doing now may not be appreciated now as much as it will be in the future, as we continue to evangelize and educate, prepare our children in a world that really does not like the Catholic Church and that is very hostile to people of faith. And it may be more important in the future, and it may be even more important after that, as civilization right now itself is starting to crumble. We represent the hope for the future by educating students and by forming them in Christ. And we need more people to help us do that. And we invite you to be part of this beautiful ministry, part of the whole Chesterton network, which is doing many good things for the kingdom of God. Thank you for being with us tonight, and God bless you.
All right. God bless everyone. Take care.
Good night, everyone.